Hello everybody, and thank you for your company once again herewith on my YouTube channel, showing you another video. I'd like to start off by showing you this coach. This is the actual coach that I first used in the very first video, of which I put online for you to have a look at how to fit LEDs into locomotives or coaches that already have pickups and bulbs, and to change them for LEDs. Now, I've moved the lighting over the workbench out of the way, because if I turn them off completely, what happens is the camera auto adjusts its light sensitivity, and it actually makes things look brighter than they really are. But if I lift this coach up a little bit, I'm going to show you that I have actually changed this yet again from a single LED to a full strip of LEDs. I'll explain why. And they are all also on shall we say slow motion coming on, and of course they have my anti-flicker circuit. So I'll switch the power on now. Here goes. There you go. You can see there was a delay in coming on, and that is absolutely perfect. You can see all the little figures inside. You can also see that the light is pretty equal all the way along, which is the reason why I wasn't happy with the original conversion to a single LED. So if I turn the power off now, you'll see it fades gradually, which means that over points or bad connections on your track, it's not going to flicker. It's as simple as that. Let me show you now what was originally in this type of coach. This here then is something called a prism. It is also more popularly known as a diffuser, and I'll explain. You can see we have a single bulb here in the middle. It's obviously kind of plastic, and what actually it does is when the bulb is illuminated, it causes the light to travel along here and then shine downwardly accordingly inside the coach. It's not the actual one from that coach I've just shown you, but it's the same kind of thing that originally was in it. And it's this kind of thing where I converted the bulb to an LED, and whilst it came out fine, I was quite happy with the result at the time. The problem with a diffuser like this along the length of a coach means that the light is bright here in the middle, and as you go further down the diffuser, it loses its intensity, which means towards the ends it's not as good. In fact, it's actually quite bad in some cases. The best way to get a more universal light across the length of a coach using a prism is to have one with a bulb at each end. And if you think about it, you're going to be bright here at each end, and as the light fades, but because it's two lots of light fading, by the time it gets to the middle it's still quite good because the two fades are mixed together. But it's still not as good as a full length of LEDs, and I'll show you. Right, there you have it. LEDs in sets of 3, so you can cut them off 3, 6, 9, 12, so on. And I've converted that coach, which I've just shown you, to a strip of LEDs like this, rather than the single LED in the middle, because the result is so much better, as you've just seen at the beginning of the video. These come on a roll like this, really dirt cheap on the internet, and the results are absolutely outstanding. I would please now like to show you this item here. This is called the Driving Carriage D, and it is a London Underground item which actually went out to the Isle of Wight. Now, I have shown this twice in 2 videos quite recently. The first video I showed basically a way of improving the EFE Metro models, in my opinion, to improve them, and fitting lighting into them as well, and of course that I did do. And the second video I showed them running. Now, it wasn't until the second video where she was actually running that I realised that the lighting was far too bright, and I mean seriously far too bright. In the workshop it looked fine on the bench, but in reality it was far too bright. I have now of course changed that, and this is the reason why I'd like to show it to you, because if I now switch on the power, now yes, the lighting is instant, but if you see, it's nowhere near as bright as it was when I ran it in the video. It's much better now. And if I switch the power off, you can see it's going to fade away, which again means no flickering on bad connections, dirty track, points, etc, etc. So with that, let me move on and let me show you how to fit lighting, LED lighting into the Class 43s by Hornby, which I have recently run, and lots of people have asked to see how I changed them, the bulbs, for LEDs. So let's go and do that right now. And so then, converting the Class 43s from a single bulb to LEDs is not hard to do. It's quite easy. I'm going to guide you through the whole thing from beginning to end, so make it as simple as I can for you to all understand. Now, when I showed you all my Class 43s just a few videos back, and I made a point of telling you that I'd already changed all the lighting to LEDs, I'd actually done them all, so I didn't have one to do and show you, but I've got a pair off of a friend of mine who not only wants them changing, he said, I'm quite happy for you to do it in a video, and then you can show everybody how you did it, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. As we go along, I'm going to try and give you one or two little tips. Now, if you look here, that is a co-op card or credit card cut up into strips like that, because these are very good and very handy. A little tip for you for getting the bodies off locomotives and coaches, where you need to be able to get them off, and where there's a little lug holding them in place. So I'll give you a bit of a demo. Now, like many coach bodies and locomotive bodies, there's little tabs there. I don't call it a tab. There's one there, and we've got one at the front, and we've got the same on the other side, and we've got one at the back on here. Now, every single coach and locomotive is different. You don't get the same procedure to get them out, but the way I've found it seems to work is if you get this one and using your fingernail under this, close to this tab here, and try not to slip and scratch the bodywork, especially if you use a screwdriver and not a fingernail, slide one of the cuttings of the credit card into there, and that will hold it like that for you. Excuse me. And then I'll just gently turn it over. Now, this might look a little vicious, but it's not as bad as it looks, really. I'm now lifting the other one up on the opposite side. We know we've got two at the front and one at the back, but the chassis on these do literally bend. So like I say, it might look a little rough, but here we go. Not as bad as you thought, look. And that allows you, and of course the credit card bits just drop out, so that allows you to get them apart like so. Now, this is the motorized one here, obviously you can see the motor there, and we're going to change this one for the bulb, a single white LED, and the dummy, which I've already taken apart, which is this one, we're going to do that with some red LEDs, and I use the term some because I always use two on the red end, because the wavelength of red is not as bright to the eye as a single LED in white is, so it's better to use two LEDs on the red end. So we'll make a start and get on with the show. Now, as well as needing the obvious things which you've seen probably in my other videos, we need a bridge rectifier for each one of them. This little one here, I'll put the numbers in the description box again, but I always use the same one, and I'll tell you why. This is very convenient, this one, because I need a pointer. Hang on. All bridge rectifiers have four legs, like that. Now, the reason these are very convenient is because A, the size is perfect. They're not big and they're not bulky. They're rated at 50 volts at 1 amp. Well, we're only going to be running somewhere between 12 and 17 volts if you're on DCC, which means perfectly alright, and you're never going to draw 1 amp from them with LEDs, certainly not with a small amount of LEDs anyway. And the other good thing about these, which is slightly different to a lot of bridge rectifiers, is that the AC is on one side coming in and the DC is on the other side coming out, which is very convenient because a lot of bridge rectifiers have the AC on opposite corners and the DC on opposite corners, and it's a lot easier to connect the capacitor to it when the DC is on one side like that. You're also going to need a couple of caps. These are 1000 microfarad at 16 volts DC, of course, and you're going to need a couple of resistors, which I've already got out, and there are two different values. One is a 470 ohm and the other is a 1.2k. I'll explain the reason for that in a little while. You'll also need, but not essentially, some of these weights, what I've shown you in a previous video, which I buy, well, I don't buy, I've already bought them once, one box full of over 100, I think it's 100, you know, for 10 or 12 quid, and these are brilliant for putting into model railway stuff, and you don't have to increase the weight on the Class 43s, but I find the traction is a lot better if you do, and it's very simple to do, and you can actually pull these apart, but I tend to just chop them up like so, because it's a little bit tidier. dead easy, look. Chop them up into separate ones, like so. There you go. So that's all the weights ready to start the show. Now here's something else you might find quite interesting before we go into the actual changing of the bulbs to LEDs, is have a look at this pack of LEDs. You've got 10 sections here. You've got 5mm and 3mm, and you've got them in, obviously you can see, blues, yellows, greens, reds and whites, and that whole pack of 500 LEDs is a mere £4 or something like that, free shipping from China. Perfect to have in stock, these are perfect for the job. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to get on with the job is remove this seating section here, which just literally comes out. Excuse me. And you can see that there, and what I'm going to simply do, because this will possibly need 2 coats, I usually do 2 coats anyway, and you don't have to do this, but I can't get the pen top off. Oh no. Oh, right, you don't have to do this, but I always colour these black with a permanent pen. I mean, I'm not going to do both of them in front of the camera, you know, you're just going to do the same thing on both. This just helps stop the light shining through. It's easy to do. You just get the old felt tip pen and, you know, just get all the corners, and I normally do it up to about there. It's not critical, somewhere around about there anyway, just to, you know, fill it all in. So there's no point in me doing any more. You can see exactly what I'm doing and where I'm coming from. So you do that to both of them, in the case of doing to the locomotive and the dummy, of course, but just you need to do them first, because you tend to need to give these a second coat, and if you do them too soon, the first coat comes loose with the wet of the pen again. If you leave them for a little while, you just give them a second coat. Moving on then to the job itself, first of all we need to remove the old bulb assembly. So we've got 2 little plug pins here. There's one, grab the other one, get that out. The bulb's just fallen out, which is fine, we don't need that now. This here is a diode, just there, and that diode is there originally for allowing the rear light, which, like I said in my video when I ran them, is actually white, it's not red, which means it becomes directional. The LED makes it directional only, but we don't want that either. So with the soldering iron, I'm just going to unsolder that bit. Come on, there we go, that's got rid of that bit. Now you can see this wire here is coming from this bogie here, which has got the pickups on it, and this one here is also coming from the bogie there, which has got the pickups on it, and we don't need the black one to be that long, so we can literally just put them together and cut them. I'll use my scissors because I forgot to get my cutters out. So we've now got those both the same length there, and we'll come back to that in a short while. Now this one is the dummy. I've already prepared that, doing exactly the same thing, and again we've got the 2 wires coming here, which I've cut the black one off to a similar length, which we are going to sharpen and tin, of course, and you'll notice that in the case of both this locomotive and this dummy, that both the wires are coming off the same bogie here. Now it can vary, because the later ones had pickups on both sides of the front bogie, which means we've got both positive and negative pickups here. On some of the earlier ones, the positive or the negative, I can't remember which, was on one bogie, and the negative or the positive, again, whichever way around it was, comes off the back bogie. So sometimes, depending on which ones you're converting, you might have one wire here, and you might have another wire coming off the back to here, but at the end of the day it stays the same. We need the 2 wires to be about that length, or this area here, ready for soldering onto our flicker free circuit, the rectifier, capacitor, etc. I've now stripped off the 2 black wires, which we've cut shorter, and just quite simply going to tin them. I'll just do the one on camera like that. I'll do the other one, I'll be back to you in a few seconds. Okay, that's done, and they've been tinned and cut short, as you can see here, there and there. We don't want great long bare wires, and they need to be really short, because they are going on to the bridge rectifier, and it's got little legs, look, so they're going to be soldered onto there in a little while, so you don't need great long legs on them, just nice and short, just like that. Okay, as I said a little bit earlier, it's not essential that you add extra weight to these, but I can only recommend to you that it is really, really good. The thing is, I add an extra 50 grams into them, and I can guarantee you that it improves the traction a lot. Now, I'll give you an example. Obviously, the motor has traction tyres on it, and if you wanted to put a set together of a 10 plus 2, that's 10 coaches in between the Loco and the dummy end, the DVT, I can assure you they won't pull it. It will not pull it. Even if you oil all the wheels on the rest of them and on the dummy, it will not pull it. The dummy actually does add quite a bit of drag because of the pickups on it for that rear lighting. So I've tried this, I've done it, and the only way I've managed to get it round the track is to put up power up the dummy end as well, in other words 2 motors, and then it works fine. But if you add the extra weights in, which I'm going to do in a minute and show you, then it will pull them without a problem at all. Here then on the dummy, I've added the extra 50 grams. I've literally piled 4 of the 10 gram weights on top of each other there in that empty space, which is not a problem, of course. It's still got its original weight here, and I've added an extra 5 just there, which does clear that when it's turning. Look, yep, it just clears it fine. And I've added an extra 5 up at the front end as well, and that really does make a massive difference. I'm going to go and do the powered section now. I don't need to show you that because it's just exactly the same. And there then you have it. That's both the power and the dummy bodies fitted with an extra 50 grams of weight. So the next thing to do is to start building the anti-flicker circuit, which we're going to use to drive the LEDs. Well, we're real close to doing the electronics now, but just one last thing before we do. With a roll of double-sided foam, 21mm thick, sticky both sides of course, I put a piece here on that weight at the front there, and I also put another thinner piece, hold it up for you there to see, just there along the front, and I'll show you why in a few seconds. Right, the next thing I normally do is to put the cap onto the rectifier, and I've done one already to show you, so let you have a quick look. Right, the way I do this, hopefully you'll be able to see this all right. Now, the way that I do this is, first of all, I will glue the cap onto the rectifier, and I will leave it so that the front of the cap here is slightly back over the rectifier. I'm sure you can see it's not in the middle there, and those two there I've already tinned. That's the AC, or the input to it I should say. They're already tinned, and funnily enough, when you glue this on to the rectifier with the front of the cap virtually flush with the front of it like that, the short lead on the capacitor, which is obviously that one here, this one, when you bend it over, it fits absolutely perfectly snug straight onto the leg of the rectifier, and then you just cut the other leg off, the longer one, and solder that on too. But you must make sure, of course, that you have got the negative and positive of the cap correct onto the rectifier, and obviously you do that and check which way round it is before you glue it on. Important here, whenever you're working with rectifiers, capacitors and LEDs, it's imperative that you keep the polarity right. The rectifier is always marked with a negative or a positive. In this case it's the negative. Now, anything like an LED or a capacitor, you'll note that this leg is shorter here, that is the negative. This leg is shorter here, that is the negative. You must always keep this correct, otherwise you're going to have problems. Now, whenever I'm doing this and fitting them into, the necessary items, I always tend to keep the negative on my right wherever possible. It's just a good habit to get into, and then you don't get too confused about things. Now, we're going to put the 2 LEDs in the rear of the dummy, as I said. This is the first one. Now, what I've done, this is the long leg. So this is the positive, which means on my right, I've got the shorter leg there, which is the negative, and I have literally bent that at a straight right angle, a full 90 degrees. Next then, we're going to put the positive leg through the hole of one of the original lighting pins, like that, and put it against the foam, the sticky foam, which now will hold it for you while you're working on it. Now holding the LED up against the foam, I'm going to get the leg and give it a full pull right round, like so, and you'll see the leg is now pointing upwards. You can now afford to cut that off just above the plastic, roughly speaking, about there. Okay, hopefully you've got that. Yep, you see it there, look. And that is our first solder point. For our second LED, which is going to be in series with the first one, we now bend up to the 90-degree angle the positive, which is this one, the long leg, because that is going to be connected to the negative of the other LED. That's what you have to do when you do things in series. It's always negative to positive. So we're going to use the short leg here to push through the hole. Okay, let's do that. Through the hole, right down. Just get it into place on the sticky foam. And then just simply push the leg down like that. Here now you can see that I've trimmed the two legs back, so there's just a small amount of them over the top of each other, because we need to solder those together obviously. And I've also pulled this leg round here, which is the negative. I pulled that all the way around and trimmed that off as well, because that will be our negative connection to both the LEDs. So let's go and do that now. Now, if you are okay with the soldering iron, those two legs which we need to solder are not actually touching the plastic at the bottom, and it's not that hard to get those to flow really quick like that in one go without burning anything. Same thing applies to the sides. I'm going to tin that one there, and I'm going to tin that one there, and we're all ready to solder our wires on. So next, as you can clearly see here, I've soldered the resistor here, which is a 470 ohm, in this case for the pair of LEDs, the red ones, and I've just soldered that onto that leg, look, without damaging the plastic. It's very easy to do. Excuse me. And I've simply soldered a red lead on the positive side here, as you can see just there. We're going to cut that to length in a few seconds. And I will point out also that I always tend to put the ballast resistor on the negative side. Again, it doesn't matter which side you put it really, but if you get into the habit of putting it onto one side and making a note of it, then it's a good habit to get into. It's now time to fit the capacitor and the rectifier assembly. Without now removing the protective film over the double-sided sticky foam here, as you can see the red film is still on it, I've used a piece of black tack, you can use blue tack obviously there, just to stick the rectifier in to hold it firm for me while I solder some wires on. You can also clearly see that I've put the cab section back on just there. So on the previously tinned inputs to the rectifier, we need the two wires putting on from the bogie. So we'll just do that one. Try again. Yep, got that. Yeah, that's good. And we'll get the other one. Yep, that is also good. The whole idea of putting it on the black tack or the blue tack first while you solder those two wires on is quite simply because if you stick it down straight away, you're going to be burning the foam underneath. So yeah, we need to remove the black tack and the protective film and glue it down. And so with both of those removed, it's just a simple case now of just putting the rectifier down, roughly speaking, in the middle, nice and square like that, and pushing her down onto the double-sided foam, as you can clearly see there. These two wires, of course, which we know are coming from the pickup assembly, they obviously need enough to be able to move, and as you can see clearly there's more than enough without a problem of them pulling taut. So yeah, we're nearly there. Just a matter of connecting up now the LEDs. And in doing that, you don't actually have to go right down onto the rectifier where you've already soldered the capacitor. You can literally just come off the two legs. So we'll just get a bit of a tinning on that leg there, and the same again on the other leg, like that. That's fine. Excuse me. Now, you'll notice Now on the cab section here, there's a slot just there, and that is actually provided for putting the wire into place like that. So we'll just swing that round. That's more than long enough, just there, and give it a cut about there. And we're going to use the resistor as the other leg anyway, and that will fit lovely just there into that slot. Just bend the leg in a little bit to help it stay like that. Hold it, and again that's quite good to come round to there. We don't need to sleeve this because it's not going to touch on anything, and if we just cut it off roughly speaking about there, we just need now to solder them together. Okay, now that the resistor has been chopped to the right length, and all we need to do now is quite literally solder them together like that. That's perfect. And then we just need to solder the red wire, the positive, let me just get it in the frame for you, onto the capacitor leg there. That's perfect. Sorry if I'm getting my fingers in the way, but I will show you. Okay, they are. You've got the positive leg there on the capacitor, and you've got the resistor there on the negative of the capacitor. So we're using the resistor as a leg basically, or as a wire basically, and that now is done and should work. So let's try it. Well guys, as the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding. So I've connected the power supply to the wheels of this dummy, so let's turn it on and see what happens. Oh, look at that, perfect. Knob on, knob on. Right, turn it off. Yep, slow fade out, anti-flicker, absolutely perfect. Now I can tell you that I have also done the powered end with the single LED, the white one, and I'll show you that right now. So just lift it up and let you have a look. Right, okay, so really simple. The procedure between the dummy and the main locomotive are exactly the same, apart from the fact that we just used a single white LED there, and the resistor, which is here, is a different value to what was on the dummy end because of the double LEDs on that one. Now, depending on what LEDs you use, there is a formula on the internet of how you can work out what the correct resistor is for the type of LED or LEDs that you use. It's very simple. You need to know the forward current and the forward voltage and punch it into the calculator on the internet, and it will give you the value of the resistor that you need to use. Before we go, a couple of other things worth mentioning to you. As you can see here on the power car, we've got the cables running to the motor itself, which is here, and you can see I've stuck them down onto the weights and the extra weights here, what I've added in, with black tack. You can use blue tack, it doesn't really matter, but black tack tends to have a little bit more grip about it, for want of a better expression. And believe it or not, most new locomotives which do have wires stuck down like this actually do use black tack. It's also worth pointing out to you here that I have already done on my Class 43s, as you already know if you've seen my other videos, and I was already aware that by mounting the capacitor on top of the rectifier, on top of that weight, that there was more than enough clearance in the top of the Class 43 body for this to fit without catching on the roof. Now, this circuit, the anti-free flicker circuit, you can use this in absolutely anything. Everything stays the same. You need the rectifier, you need the capacitor, you need the LED or LEDs or a strip of LEDs in all the cases. So it's very, very flexible. You can put it anywhere. The positioning of the capacitor on the rectifier is completely irrelevant. Every single item is going to be different, so you can literally mount the rectifier horizontal, you can literally mount the capacitor horizontal to the rectifier, or you can mount it on top, there's just so many different ways you can mount it. The wiring stays the same. The only thing is that you have to be sure that what you do, it will fit into the locomotive or the coach body, but the rest stays the same apart from the value of the resistor, depending on how many leads and what kind of leads you use. Also, another point that is quite important here, when you mount this, if you're doing a class 43, when you mount the rectifier and capacitor assembly onto the sticky pad on this weight here, it's a good idea to keep it to the very front of the sticky pad, and the reason being for that is that inside the body there is a wall here, which is the back wall of the cab assembly, and we don't want it catching on this wall, so keep it towards the back of the sticky pad and it'll fit perfectly alright. So last thing to do is to put them together. Here you go, and the way you do this is you tuck it down inside at an angle like that, bring it down, and carefully, you will probably notice now that the back is sticking out. So what I tend to do is hold the middle of the chassis so the back drops into place like that, then push the whole thing home, and there it is, back in place. All the lugs have located, absolutely spot on. There is your finished product. Maybe that way is better for you. But I think that's about it, guys. I can't really think of anything else. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's helpful to you, not only just for the class 43s, but anything you want to put anti-flicker free lighting in with LEDs. So yeah, there's no point in putting the dummy in and showing you. I'm just showing you how to put it back together there. So like with all of that, it's now 20 past 12 here in the UK, so that means it's now Boxing Day. But I can still say Happy Christmas to you, and I'm hoping to get another video done before the new year. It should happen, hopefully, and I can tell you here and now that it will be part 2 of the series that I came up with the idea of doing trains and locomotives in films and movies. I've already got the layout set up virtually for part 2, so you know, watch out for that, and I'll see you then. Bye everyone. Toodaloos, bye.